Voting has ended in Malaysia and now the counting of votes has begun in the country, as the nation is all set to elect its next Prime Minister. So far, the results of 60 parliamentary seats have been announced, and the result trends show that the major coalitions appear to be evenly matched. The Pakatan Harapan alliance, led by the long-term opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim, is set to be leading in about 16 seats, while Barisan National Coalition, led by the incumbent Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaqub, has managed to get about 13 seats, and the Perikatan National Bloc, led by the former Premier Muhyiddin Yassin, is reportedly leading by about 14 seats. 22 million Malaysians were eligible to cast their vote in the elections to fill up 222 seats in the federal parliament and choose representatives for 3 state legislatures. Now, the key issue, of course, that has dominated all through campaigning is that of the cost of living crisis, corruption, and also the political infighting that seems to have plagued the country for nearly about 3 years. Malaysians want a few things from their government. One of the first things that they're looking for from their elected representatives is in terms of how they would sort out the cost of living crisis that has gripped the country. And apart from this, corruption happens to be a key issue. So is political stability, so are issues of race and religion as well.
We hope the leader should be able to bring the country forward rather than, with the domestic issues. So Malaysia used to be one of the Asian tigers economically, so hopefully that will be translated again.
However, it seems like these issues are not getting resolved anytime soon, despite the candidates promising jobs and also better economic prospects. Remember, Malaysia has been plagued with several cases of corruption, with ex-Prime Minister Najib Razak currently serving a 12-year prison sentence for his involvement in the 1MDB scandal. With voters mainly concerned about corruption, the political parties, along with 3 major coalitions, have in fact projected themselves as being trustworthy, clean and competent. But the question, of course, is, have these promises been enough to, in fact, convince an average Malaysian voter to come forth and cast their vote for them? All right, now to give us more insights in terms of what's exactly happening with the elections in Malaysia, we're being joined by Dave Groeneboom, who's a senior journalist who's joining us live from Subang Jaya in Malaysia. Dave, we're given to understand, presently at the election night hub for the opposition coalition Pakatan Harapan. Give us a sense of what the mood is out there and how is it panning out for the different parties.
So the Pakatan Harapan team is cautiously optimistic about how things are going. You talked about the results, the official results, which we'd seen. I heard you talking about them just a little bit earlier. What they've been saying all week is, look, they know it's going to be very difficult to get to that magic number of 112 seats. The pre-election polling says that none of the coalitions are going to get there. But Pakatan Harapan has been saying that they're hoping that they can get to 100 seats through the election or close to 100 seats. And that would put them close enough that they could just try to partner up with, a few small minor parties, and that could get them over the hub of 112 seats. Obviously, we're going to find out. It could be a long night. We're going to find out if we're going to get there. A bit of breaking news here. The longtime Prime Minister, former 2-time Prime Minister, Mahathir Mohamad, he has lost his seat. First time in 53 years that he has not won an election here. He loses his seat. That is a stunning upset. We should put in mind, though, that he's 97 years old. He'd been the prime minister twice. He was the prime minister after the last election 4.5 years ago, but his coalition, that crumbled less than 2 years later due to infighting and defections. But still, people thought for sure he could at least retain his seat. Certainly a sign of generational change here that he goes down tonight.
Absolutely, indeed. That of course, is the big story, which I'm pretty sure will dominate the headlines in the days to come. But I want you to, in fact, shed some light in terms of what happens in the case that none of the coalitions actually can form a majority. So what happens after that?
Yeah, and that is going to be the likely scenario. Well, what happens then? You see horse trading going on as the different coalitions, the ones that seem to have a fighting chance to get to 112, try to make deals to try to get there. Pakatan Harapan, are they going to be close enough that they just need to work something out with a couple minor parties or team up with somebody somewhere else to try and get them there? But here's a big thing to keep in mind here. Should Barisan Nasional, the current ruling coalition, and Perikatan Nasional, should those two together, would that be enough seats to reach 112? If that scenario were to unfold, it's very possible that they could unite. They're competing against each other here, but keep in mind the component parties of those two coalitions have worked together before, so a very possible scenario that they could work together if that's enough to get them to 112 seats.
All right, very interesting there. Now, one of the issues about Malaysian politics that we've witnessed is the all-pervasive corruption. There are former prime ministers who have been accused of corruption, who have been convicted and who are also serving prison sentences. Now, looking at the three major coalitions that we've got here that are competing, what is the difference between the three and how do they intend to clean up the corrupt politics in Malaysia?
Yeah, so let's start off with the ruling coalition, Barisan Nasional. Of course, the former Prime Minister Najib Razak, who's now in prison serving a 12-year sentence for corruption. He was the leader of Barisan Nasional and was the Prime Minister of this country. Now, they stand for Malay rights. That's a big part of their platform. The ethnic Malays, they get preferential treatment in this country when it comes to government jobs, housing, and education. They make up about 2/3 of the population. Of course, Barisan Nasional, they've been saying that Najib was wrongly convicted, that it was a political prosecution. Their chairperson, Zahid Hamidi, he's also facing a corruption trial right now on 47 charges. He also says that is a political prosecution. So they're saying that this is all political prosecution by opponents. Now let's take a look at Perikatan Nasional. They are another one of the three major coalitions. They are made up of a splinter party from Barisan Nasional that also pushes for Malay rights, and they have teamed up with the Malaysian Islamic Party. And then the third coalition, the traditional opposition coalition, Pakatan Harapan, they are a multi-ethnic coalition. They are left of center, social democratic. The agenda that they push is that opportunities are based not on race or religion, but based on merit and financial need. They have strong support in this country's minority community. Of course, they're looking to pull an upset. They pulled off the big upset 4.5 years ago, only to find their coalition crumble less than 2 years later due to infighting and defections. Can they pull off another upset tonight? Oh, we'll find out.
Absolutely indeed. My last question to you, Dave, is, of course, in terms of the voter turnout. We're going to understand that the voters under the age of 40 form a substantial percentage of the electorate. What is the voter turnout like? And what have these young men and women of Malaysia actually voted for?
So the last count we saw voter turnout was above, it was approaching 70%. But the question is, there were still several hours to go. How much more would it go beyond that? We don't have the numbers on that yet. As far as total voters under 40, more than half of eligible voters in this country are under the age of 40. So they make up a huge part of it. And it's clear, looking at the campaigns, that candidates were really trying to court these voters. The coalitions rolled out a lot of young candidates to appeal to them. Candidates of all ages were doing meet and greets, going to coffee shops, trying to meet young voters. And another thing also important to pull out here is pre-election surveys were showing that 70% of young voters, that they didn't trust politicians or political parties. They trusted personalities. And these candidates were clearly trying to put out images that they were not just politicians who were out for blood sport, that they had causes that they were willing to fight for. That was clearly played out in the campaign.
Absolutely indeed, Dave. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and getting us all those updates. I will, of course, come back to you as more details emerge in this story. The voting, of course, continues to go on in Malaysia. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.